Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 646. Available now on digital is Godless, a drama that stars Ana Ortiz as Angela Porra, the governor of New York and practicing Catholic, whose decision to allow gay marriage in the state draws the ire of newly appointed Bishop Reginald Rolland, played by Harry Lennix, who decides to excommunicate the governor. An intelligent and profound work that handles its controversial subjects with impressive sophistication. Godless also marks the latest film by Michael Ricigliano, who I'm glad to say joins me now on the podcast. Michael, how are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm good. I'm good.
So this is a really interesting movie. I, we were talking just off air before about how myself as a practicing Catholic and a film fan, it's kind of rare to come across a movie like this that handles its material with such, like I said in my intro, sophistication, intelligence. Um, and I think what's really impressive about this film is that kind of like the road towards it being made a film. Originally, it was going to be a play, and from what I understand, and I think I heard this in another interview you did, the play was supposedly going to be in Latin as well. Is this true?
That is true. It was originally going to be based on a tribunal
Hmm.
that, when the Catholic Church does their own investigations and they have their own type of either prosecutions or trials, they would have a tribunal. And this was going to be back, in the early 1900s, when the tribunal, everything was in Latin. And you would kind of have to get an understanding as to what was going on in the trial by listening to it in Latin. So I originally started the play as being spoken in Latin, and then it evolved to what we have today.
When you wrote the play originally, and then decided to change it over to film, what were the decisions that made to that? Was COVID kind of like the main kind of impetus in trying to like transition from one thing to the other?
It was. I mean, in theater in and of itself is especially for straight plays off Broadway. There's not a lot of margin for profit at all. So investors that are getting involved in theater, it really is a donation. A lot of times, not for profits put them on. But when COVID hit, there was no margin for profit, because first it was you couldn't have anyone in the theaters. Then in the theaters it was every other seat, and it really took a hit. So it was at that time that I decided to change gears and write it as a play, from the play to the film, and open it up a little bit more for the scenes. And we were able to do that, and shot it at a seminary here in Huntington, which is on Long Island in New York, called the Seminary of the Immaculate Conception. And they were wonderful to host us. And then we had a couple of other scenes outside of the seminary, and it worked out. But it was originally a play that really was geared towards a play. That's why there's just a lot of dialogue in there. It's not, a very action fast paced. It's you got to really concentrate on what's going on between the characters.
Wonderful dialogue, I got to say as well. I actually love the exchanges between the character of Angela and Bishop Rolland. Speaking of which, Anna and Harry are both fantastic in the film. I mean, you couldn't find a better person to play a Bishop, I think, than Harry Lennix. I think just his voice alone brings us an authority in his cadence as well, just in regards to that part. How early in the process are they involved in this? Were they ever in talks when we were talking about a play, or was were they only in talks when it came to the transition to film?
No, actually, Harry was one of my first one of my first thoughts of for the Bishop. And we really got lucky because one of our producers, who was in the on the film side as well as the theater side, knew him. And we got him the script early on, and like 2 days later he's like, I'm in. Now Harry, who by the way has become a very close friend, was in the seminary
Hmm.
prior to him being an actor. So
Is
he
that
really
right?
took to the role. So Harry was with us from the beginning. We went through several different Angelas throughout the play process. But I had done work with Anna on another play I'd written called Phelan House, and she was absolutely fantastic. So when we were able to go into the film stage, we reached out to Anna, and she was kind enough to come in from LA, and she just really knocked it out of the park. She was great.
Considering you were talking about it's a play where it's a dialogue heavy, you have these two actors. How much time is there for rehearsal? Does COVID really restrict that kind of stuff, or is there kind of like Zoom rehearsals for this? Because I imagine trying to get into the rhythms of your dialogue and kind of like the scenarios and such, maybe to need some little bit of prep time for your actors to get in there.
We had done probably 4 or 5 readings of the play where everyone was together since I started writing it, which was in 2017, 2018. But the actors that we had in the film had all gone through the reading process for the stage. So their transfer over from one to the other, you didn't really need to coach them or say this is what the character's about, because they knew the character. We'd already gone through the readings. They had, the different versions of it leading up to when we started filming. So that really helped us because, like I said, we shot that over 12 days. I mean, it was a lot of dialogue. You're doing 10, 15 pages a day in dialogue. So without them knowing the work so well and knowing who the character was really allowed us to get through it. So you weren't going through 10 takes. It was, 1, 2, 3 takes. And you were like, great, let's go on. We're on to the next. And the team that we had behind us were fantastic as well. Our producers, Alyssa Rabinowitz and Vincent Petrus. I mean, it was like everything was moving. So we actually came in like a half a day under. It was great. It was great.
Yourself, as you're a practicing Catholic, but you also grew up like in politics. Like politics, I think your father was a lawyer, but he had associates that were in politics, and that world was around you. So like you're immersed in both of these worlds. How much of the story in Godless, how much of the characters in Godless are kind of like a reflection of your own kind of thoughts and feelings on some of these issues that are presented in the movie?
Well, I grew up around politics. My father was an attorney. His law partner was the chairman of the Republican Party in my area. I'm an attorney. My brother's an elected official. Not elected, he's a judge, but he's elected in New York. And, I could see from the position of the excommunication and the political fallout to see, what I would think growing up around that, what the background would be, because that's what a lot of the play is about. It's the Catholic politician who's excommunicated but wants to run for president, and now the religious right is coming down and they vote in New York and in the U.S. The Catholics, they vote, and her trying to walk that line as to, do I owe an obligation to my faith first, or is it to my constituents who have elected me? As well as to the bishop who kind of goes out and does this excommunication on his own. Only a couple of people know about it, and they're not happy about it because it's now brought this firestorm against the church. So a lot of the play deals with how you would kind of navigate the political waters if this were to happen. Most times in the U.S., if there's a Catholic politician who, let's see, is as fostering or kind of promoting something that's not within the church's teachings, like abortion or assisted suicide or gay marriage, or whatever it is, if they go into a diocese and they're running for office or they're elected official and they say, we're going to go to mass, sometimes the bishops will say, well, you can come to mass, but don't take communion because you're acting outside the faith, right? And what they'll do is they don't want to do that because they don't want to be seen not getting communion. So they'll go to a different diocese that the bishop will allow them to receive communion. It's kind of up to the bishop of that diocese. In this case, I had it where the bishop was like, look, I'm not going to go down that path. You're excommunicated, and now you deal with it. And however the fallout's going to be, this is what it's going to be. And I'm okay with that decision, even though ultimately it, his political rise within the church gets knocked down.
The Matt's Movie Reviews YouTube channel is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you love. What's really interesting about the film, and I think it's a reflection of like where we are in modern times with the church's kind of influence in society and politics. At first, the governor is kind of spooked by it. She's like, "Oh, I want to run for future ambitions of president," and then you have, of course, I really love how you have the one of the main links between the two characters is the link of the governor's mum, who kind of becomes kind of like this almost like a moral arbiter between both, this one intimate connection between both of these people. She's kind of spooked by it, but then I think in something you rightly show in the movie is that the church doesn't have the same sway like it used to have upon society, upon politics. There's a lot of reason for that, secularization of the public, the sexual abuse scandals, huge, kind of like an albatross over the neck of the church whenever it comes to anything to talk about the moral and anything moral whatsoever. And I think what you show in the film, and I don't want to give away too much, but that the sway where people might fear that going against the church may affect them negatively, I think most people will find that when it comes to the political game, maybe it won't be that hard to overcome these days, because I don't think it will have that much impact upon the people when it comes to who they want to vote for. Maybe a portion of the populace, but not everyone as it used to be, maybe even 20, 30 years ago.
And I think that in my mind is one of the reasons, or one of the main reasons, that the bishop excommunicated her, because he doesn't want a Catholic politician who just skates by and kind of champions causes that are not within the teachings of the church to then become president or move up in the political landscape. And Catholics look at that and say, well, if that's okay if they allow the president to do this, then why shouldn't I be able to do this? And that's kind of what his position is, we can't just keep moving the line, right? We have to draw the line somewhere. And that's what his position is. I don't want all the Catholics looking at this one politician who is allowed to do whatever he or she wants, and the church does nothing about it. And then how are we going to enforce our own rules with our own clergy if they look at an elected official and say, well, it's okay for them, so then it must be okay for me? And that's really his position. It's gotten to the point where you have to make a choice. And he doesn't. He says, listen, I'm not saying you can't believe in what you want to believe, but just don't go around saying that you're in good standing with the church. You want to believe whatever you want. Just don't go to our voting base and say, hey, look at me. I'm a good Catholic when you're acting outside the church's teachings. And that's his strong position. Whereas her position is, I haven't, these people elected me. They're not Catholic. They're all everything. And if this is what they want, then I, as their elected official, that's my obligation to give to them, to sign these. If this is what they want, that's why they elected me. They elected me to be their representative, not just the representative of one religion. So that's where the dynamic kind of hits, especially when you have someone who is a devout Catholic like the governor in this situation. And she's saying to herself, I'm struggling with these laws, or these bills that they want me to sign into law. So that's kind of where the crisis of faith happens.
There's so many real life examples of how these things kind of happened, not to the extent where it shows in the movie, but pretty close skirting the line of doing so. Joe Biden, for example, I know that one archdiocese, I don't think it was in Delaware, I think it was in Pennsylvania or Pittsburgh or something, said you can't take communion here. Nancy Pelosi, I know there was things like that with her. I think Mario Cuomo, the previous governor, the father of the Anthony Cuomo, was in that kind of same kind of wheelhouse there in New York as well. Kathy Hochul, who's now the governor now, she talks about her Catholicism quite a bit, but I don't know where her, considering she's a Democrat, I imagine her stance would be the same as the governor in your movie. When it comes to the process itself of a bishop making decisions like this, like excommunicating against a politician, what is the actual process of that? I mean, you're not only a filmmaker, you research this stuff. You're a lawyer, an attorney. You looked into the canon law. How does that all work? Can one kind of bishop, like the bishop in your movie, can he just say, "Yep, I'm going to make this decision. Don't need to talk to anyone, and it's going to get done"? Or is there a process to this? Is there kind of like, is it almost political in a way where you have to get votes from some people, and then they have to go to another people, and then you have to get authority from the Pope? How does that all kind of work?
Well, from the research that I had done, it was if you are a parishioner in a diocese, the archbishop of that diocese has the ability to excommunicate you. Now, there are different ways that you can be excommunicated. One would be like a self excommunication, which they would call like ipso facto, right? Mm-hmm. The act speaks for itself, which would be, let's say as a Catholic, you desecrate, no one knows about it, you desecrate the sacrament. Okay, that would be a way that you could excommunicate yourself. No one knows about it, but God knows about it. Same thing with, heresy or whatever those sort of things you can do by yourself. No one knows about it. But then there are other things that you've done that the bishop knows about. The bishop sees that, and he can excommunicate you. In this situation, really, she signed into law originally a law, the first in her state for same-sex marriage. And really that's the catalyst for him. But, this late-term abortion bill is moving through the legislature, and she's committed that if it gets through, she'll sign it. And he's really, I think, pushing that doesn't happen, which is kind of his basis for the excommunication in the first place. So there are different ways to go to be excommunicated. Again, one is you're by yourself and you do something that is, and that would be as an ipso facto. But in this, it's someone it's like you've done this. They know about it. They see it. It's public, and they've excommunicated her for that. And my understanding is, the bishop of that diocese, if you're a parishioner, has the ability to do that. Now, would the bishop do that with a governor of the state? That would be such a huge thing. I'm sure, he'd probably start to speak to some people and say, I'm going to do this and get there. I mean, I can only assume if you're hitting something so big that's really only happened maybe once before that I've read, which was down in Louisiana back in like the 50s. Right. A politician was excommunicated, but since then, everything has been, just don't go to communion. You're right. It's that kind of thing where they don't want to go to that drastic step. And in this situation, the bishop does.
There's a thing in this movie. There's not only are there people wrestling kind of like with their kind of like spiritual selves, that the question of what they're doing is right or wrong in regards to like a theological or spiritual account, but there's also there's a fight between ambition and authenticity, who you are versus who you want to be, or how you want to be perceived. And I think the Angela character definitely has that. You spoke just now about the part in the film where she's kind of wrestling with this late-term abortion bill. She knows she has to sign it in, but she's like, I talked to my mother about this. This is wrong. I can't do it. And her people on her team they really have a kind of like, pardon the expression, but like a come to Jesus kind of meeting. Go, look, they voted for you because you said you can't do this. You can't back out now, kind of thing. And to me, that's a really kind of interesting thing, because on one end, when it comes to the character of Angela, the people on her side are like, look, this is who you say you are. This is who you're representing. You have to do this. However, when it comes to Bishop Rolland, when he's talking to people, the higher ups, I think like the cardinal or stuff like that, they're like, you can't do this, this is wrong kind of thing. It's really interesting how the support systems on either side are kind of different, even though they are following the letter of the law to a certain extent. Bishop Rolland's kind of support team or stuff is like, look, you're kind of embarrassing us right now in front of everyone. Whereas Angela's support team is like, look, this is what you have to do. This is what you are. It's very kind of interesting kind of dynamic going between there behind the scenes, like political mechanisms in both kind of institutions.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I believe is that the church, like anything else, has a hierarchy. It has bishops and cardinals and popes, and there's a political play that goes on within the church. Just to be appointed cardinal or what, I mean, you have to really, I think, to get to that level, understand how politics works. And the same thing with being a governor or a senator or whatever. You have to understand, there's a game to play within this. With Bishop Rolland, in this, he doesn't care. He doesn't care what the fallout is going to be. He understands that this is what he feels is right, and he's going to do it. Even if that affects the higher ups above him in what they're looking to do. Because I think, in the film, everyone was kind of on board, but really wanted to make sure that they got the support of Rome. And in this situation, he just was like, I'm not waiting anymore. I'm doing it. But also, for the governor's point of view is, I don't think that, and she says it, this was never going to pass. Like it's a little hypocritical. I was never supposed to have this decision because it was never supposed to, it never had the votes. And he's like, and Patrick Breen, who plays her chief of staff, who's unbelievable. It's like, look, this is why you were elected.
Yeah.
You're not their pope. You're not their bishop. You're their governor. And this is what they want. And she understands that. And I think makes the decision, which obviously in the second half of the film, we kind of get into when they get together and they kind of talk it out. But, it's a very fine line. And I don't think it's an easy decision to make in certain situations. Especially, as a Catholic, and you have dogma, you have rules that you're supposed to abide by. And it's tough to in some situations say, well, I do believe that, but I'm going to do this, which is going to affect millions of people. That's the issue that she's facing.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon Prime Video. One of the best on-demand streaming services available, Amazon Prime Video features exclusive Amazon originals as well as popular movies and TV shows. Watch Amazon Prime Video anytime, anywhere. Yeah. When I watch the film, and I have so much sympathy for both characters, I'm only human though, and I'm no doubt considering, my religious, who I am as a religious person, I found myself siding more with Bishop Rolland throughout the film. Not to say that one person's a good guy or a bad guy, it's just my personal preference. Do you have people talking to you about, they were siding with one person over the other? And I know that is no way, any way, an intention of yours while watching the film, but people are people when they're going to have their own kind of personal opinions, especially something as heated as, say, the topics in the film. So they're going to feel one way or another. Do you have people actually talking to you about this whatsoever?
We've shown the film a few times, and once we did it at a church. We did it, to raise money, and we showed it. And people that are devout Catholics, they don't, for the most part, they'll listen, but they have their understanding as to what they believe. And on the other side, it's the same thing. It's an interesting thing, and the purpose of the film was to show both sides and have a discussion that people can see and understand both sides of the argument. But there are people that they don't want to hear it either side. They want to see one way, and that's it. And that's unfortunate, but that's what the climate we're living in. So it depends. People that are more moderate, they get it. They get it. But if you're more conservative, you're more liberal on it, there was, for the governor, there's no choice. She was elected. There's no religion plays no part of it. No. But to the Catholics, it's like, how can you do that if you believe this? So there's definitely some tension there if you are way on the right or way on the left.
Do you think when it comes to religion and politics, and I'm talking specifically about politicians who might talk about their religion and stuff, do you think that is something that should be left on the wayside? I know, like, some religious people like it when, like, a really kind of conservative politician, for example, will say, I'm pro this, I'm anti that, whatever, because of my faith. My faith takes me through this, what have you. I myself find it to be it can be a really double-edged sword, because, like how Angela does in the film, she's going to find herself in situations where, when she declares who she is, it's going to come to a point where what she is and who she represents is going to really it's going to be in conflict with her spiritual life. And I think that it's best that's, kind of like how, I don't know, if once you punch your ticket and you go into the office, you just leave that stuff on the outside and you just do the work and you go forward? Or do you think that because these subjects, especially when it comes to personal, political, religious beliefs, is just so intertwined to who we are as people, it's really hard to kind of, put a straight line through the middle and just have almost two different personas of the one person, depending on the environment that they're in?
Well, what's happening in the U.S. now is it's making it much more difficult to separate yourself. One example would be the reversal of Roe v. Wade. So now they're leaving it up to the states to decide what their position is going to be. Now, before, going back when Roe v. Wade was law, if someone asked you and you're a politician, say, well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I believe because this is the law of the land. This is what it is. Now that they've reversed that, and now it's up to the states. There are states that when you're running, depending on where you're going, either New York, which is a much more liberal state than, say, Texas, depending on where you stand on these issues, depends on whether you get elected. Whereas as before, you could kind of on some of these things say, oh, no, well, that's the law of the land. The Supreme Court's already ruled on this. I have no say in this. Now it's, well, wait a second, where do you stand on this? And if in certain states, if you say, well, I believe in X, you're not going to get elected. But in other states, if you believe in X or Y, they'll say, oh, that's right up the, with how the voting base is. So I think that it's much more difficult today to separate your faith because of some of the recent decisions where the states now are in charge of drafting laws or having laws that, especially if you're looking at abortion in some states, it's, almost completely illegal to have an abortion, not even after certain, but in other states you can have late term abortion. And where you sit on that when you're running is going to see whether or not you're going to get elected, I think. So I think it's much more difficult today than it was where the states are more in charge of the laws that they're going to pass and not as restricted as they would have been with some of the laws that the Supreme Court had on the books.
I think, to me, something that I've just watching from here, from Australia, and is having an impact here as well, as that I think when it comes to politics these days, people are seeking out more in regards to individuals as opposed to party. I don't think they go for the party line anymore, but more like the cult of personality more than anything else. I think that's something, and it's starting to happen here as well. I think the whole kind of the Trump effect kind of thing has really had a huge influence in a lot of different places, Australia, as well. And I think it's really it's interesting how before it was always about, well, you have to toe the party line, but nowadays it seems like the party line kind of toes around the individual. And I think that's something that I see anyway. Is that something that you kind of you're seeing as well?
Well, locally, I don't see that much around where I am. There are, there are certain parties that you're either voting Republican, you're voting Democrat. You have these minor party lines sometimes, and you want to get the minor party line endorsements that kind of boost up where you are. But locally, I don't see that too much. Nationally, you can see that more nationally, that people are coming out and it's more their personality. And although they're affiliated with a party, they may kind of not agree with everything that party is doing. And that's helping them, as they run. But I don't, in New York locally, or even on the state, you're not seeing very many independents, winning Senate or governor, or even the local state senators or legislator races. You're with a major party. Now, you may not fit into that party as well, but you're definitely being registered as one of those. I don't see many around independents making, the best they're doing is splitting the vote a little bit and taking it away from, one party or the other, some votes. So I don't see that as much here, even though nationally you'll see that a little bit more.
It's such a interesting, fascinating subjects and topics, and I think what you do with Godless is you really kind of bring this stuff to the fore, and I really love the way that you handled it, because I think sometimes when it comes to films that kind of tackle these subjects, they like to, as you say, sometimes they like to demonize one to kind of glorify the other. And I think it's really important that a movie like this is out, because it really shows the complications, the contradictions, and also shows, what it's like to be an ambitious person, but also a person of authenticity within these different, realms, both in very influential realms in the religious and political life. And for everyone out there listening, Godless, available now on digital. I really recommend you watch this film. I know my personal opinion is that I know that last year, like everyone was like conclave, and that stuff. For me, Godless trumps conclave in so many ways.
I appreciate that.
I absolutely love this film, and I really recommend people check it out. And yeah, Michael, I thank you so very much for your time.
Matt,
and
it's an
congrats with
absolute
the movie.
pleasure. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
All right.
I'm just going to press stop here. Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content.